Welcome back, everyone. And now, Dr. Daniel Ennis, president of Delta State University, joins us. Good to see you there, Dr. Ennis. Thanks for coming on.
I'm so glad to be here, Gerard. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
We got you. Yes, sir. Loud and clear. All right. So we've got a couple of articles on the SuperTalk website discussing the financial situation there at Delta State University. And it sounds like that you've got lots of irons in the fire to try to rectify the situation. Give us an update. Where do things stand right now and what's going on?
Well, I'm relatively new to the institution, but since I was hired and since I've gotten here about 5 months ago, I've been working with my staff and studying. And, what we have is addressable. It's fixable, but we are going to have to look at our budget differently and look at our expenses and sort of tighten things up so we live within our means going forward.
Dr. Ennis, do you believe that the current financial situation is a function of declining revenue, increasing expenses, combination of the two?
It's a combination of everything that you said. I mean, Delta State has had declining enrollment for over a decade, and given a big chunk of our budget is tuition, every decline in enrollment is effectively a budget reduction if you think about it. But also higher ed is expensive. Higher ed is labor intensive, and it's the kind of labor that really can't be automated very well. So as our expenses go up, as things like inflation affect us with everything from power to lights to software, we have to adjust to the realities of how much money we really have to work with up here at the Delta.
Yeah. Now, it is our understanding that you have created a committee that is tasked with studying this issue and trying to come out with some potential solutions to address the financial constraints.
Yes, sir. What's important is that we preserve and protect our core mission to educate students. And so that means as we move towards solvency, we've got to be very careful that we, sort of put some barriers around our actual important work of educating Mississippians. And so that means a committee is the best way to do that because you get a lot of opinions, you get a lot of ideas, and you also need to let people have ownership. When you make cuts, you make people unhappy. There'll be some unhappiness for sure. But one of my aims is to make sure folks know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and they have the same information I do when I make the final calls on what we're going to continue with and what we're going to have to discontinue.
Is thinking about the most recent financial statements and reporting period, is the university cash flow negative right now on a period basis?
Today?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, at the end of the year, without any changes, the university will be in a deficit situation. Now, of course, we have cash on hand that we have to keep for security purposes for a rainy day. And one of my concerns coming in is that, if you run a deficit year after year, unfortunately, as Delta State has, you eat into that rainy day fund. And then when the rainy day comes, you're in a true crisis. So the idea here is to right size the budget so every year we end with a surplus, which is responsible budgeting for any public entity.
Sure. Or private entity for that matter, but same goal.
Sure.
So is there a particular dollar goal that the committee's working on, trying to figure out how to kind of close that gap? Is there an objective there, a stated financial objective?
Oh, yes. I've been pretty specific. One of the main goals is that we end every year with a contingency. So we build 90 days cash on hand. And that's a pretty standard higher ed practice. And in private sector, too, is 90 days cash is what you need if you ever have a tornado or a pandemic. We've all lived through circumstances where you might have an interruption in your operations. So to do that, we need to start saving money at the end of each year. And unfortunately, of late, Delta State has ended each year in the negative and then used some reserves or some extra cash here or borrowed from Peter to pay Paul, if you will. So the 90 days cash is a long-term goal. Of course, you can't get there in a year. So the short-term goal is we're working on $2.4 million this fiscal year, then about $3 million next fiscal year. Eventually, with enrollment as it is right now, Delta State really should be operating around $40 to $42 million in budget. And of late, it has been spending more than that each year, and we've got to stop that.
Okay. So to get to that goal then, as you said, you may have to make some very difficult, unpopular decisions that could involve perhaps cutting staff, programs, services, curricula, all the above.
Absolutely. And I've been trying to be pretty forthright about that. 77% of this university's budget, and many university budgets, this is a normal number, 77% of our budget is payroll. And so the reality is,
Sure.
Folks who don't understand higher ed budgeting might say, well, cut travel or cut commodities or cut this and that. But meaningful cuts at the size that are necessary for Delta State will involve payroll. And I have to be upfront about that with folks. And that means, we have to look at having fewer people on the payroll and fewer dollars going out to service the students we have. But I do want to add that, this is not the end of the story. At the same time, we're spending an equal amount of energy on rebuilding our enrollment strategies and bringing in more students and looking at other resources, because I'm not setting the budget based on the enrollment we have now. I'm setting the budget based on the cash we have now. But enrollment can and should increase if we are more aggressive in the market.
Yeah. So I then presume you're personally active in those activities, right? Getting out and about and telling the Delta State story and recruiting students to the university.
Yes, sir. And the reason I took this job, and I had people go, well, why did you go out there with all these problems, is there's a great story to be told. There's an extraordinary university up here in the Delta, and the students who come here have a great experience, and we have the capacity for more students to have that great experience. So my personal investment is, I'll go out. I was at a high school 2 nights ago. I'll go out and talk to students directly. And of course, I work directly with our terrific enrollment team to talk about, who is hearing about Delta State and who are we missing, and who might want to know about the great things we're doing up here in Cleveland, Mississippi, and be part of it. And I got to tell you, it's easy to talk about Delta State because it's got such an extraordinary story and great programming. So I love talking to folks about why they might want to consider Delta State, parents, students, anybody really. I'll talk to anybody about the great institution that I work at here.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fantastic history and legacy, undoubtedly. An icon in the state of Mississippi, and we want to see it thrive. So what about the IHL, Dr. Ennis? I know you're accountable to them. They're obviously very aware of the situation. You have to provide those reports and advice. Have you kind of increased the frequency of communication with them given the situation?
Well, I don't have anything to compare it to because, of course, I'm new, but certainly
Yeah.
I'm in regular contact with the IHL. I gave a pretty comprehensive report to them at their annual retreat in September. And then, of course, I update them through the commissioner as developments warrant. I might email all the commissioners. I might email all the trustees. I might email the commissioner and ask him if he wants to circulate it. I hope and believe that they are getting regular and pertinent information about things here, and they have been supportive. I think I gave them a pretty unvarnished account of what I was facing, and then laid out the steps that I intend to take. And they indicated that I should proceed, and I think they know that something has to be done. And unfortunately, it's come on my watch, but that's okay. Delta State is got a great future, and it's worth it to do the work now for all the great things that we're going to continue to do up here in Mississippi.
Now, you did have a $2 million infusion not so long ago, a grant to fund the Destination Graduation program, and that'll certainly kind of soothe some of the financial pain. Tell us how that'll be used.
So that grant, first of all, the timing was great. When you come into a situation like this and you have stories about your institution that maybe you wish weren't the front page, it's great to have a win. And that was a terrific win. I had nothing to do with it. I came in, that grant was already written. Other folks did a great job writing that grant. But what I really like about that grant is it's highly tied to student success. And of course, that's part of our basically our brand here, is that we have a personalized approach. We have faculty who know their student's name. I was talking to an alum the other day, and he had started his college career at a much larger Mississippi university. It doesn't matter which one. And he said, at that university, all I did was learn my student number. And then I transferred to Delta State, and people knew my name. And that grant is part of that, because it's about a student success program where we intervene in students' situations when we find out they're having problems. It's an early warning system. It's resources to help a student. We can look at their grades after 4 weeks and say, hey, we've got to connect you with some tutoring, or we've got to work with you on time management, or we need to give you some academic resources. And that's the kind of thing that a smaller school is nimble enough to do on an individual basis, student by student.
We appreciate you coming on, Dr. Ennis, and talking about the great Delta State University, and we wish you all the best. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you some more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth Studios. Stay with us.